his body. And this, the simple way that this word is used in the Parsha is Eikev Tishmiyun. Eikev over here is used to denote the end, meaning at the end of Tishmun, at the end of your following through on all the mitzvahs of Hashem, the end of that is that Hashem will keep His promises. But it's using this unusual expression of Eikev, which means the hill. And the Chachamim say, and Rashi right away comments, brings down, that the word over here also has another meaning. It means actually the heel of a person's foot. And it means to denote that there are mitzvahs, there are inyonim aspects of a person's life that a person steps on them like one steps with a heel. The idea of stepping on them means that these are things which are outside of the human awareness or orientation. You understand the words that I'm using, everybody? A person has seichel and midas. He has intelligence and he has feelings. Those things that are comprehended and recognized as important, as significant, with his seichel, with his intelligence, and with his midas, those things a person relates personally to. When he says, these are part of my makeup. I see how doing this and how following through on this describes me as a human being, as a person. And therefore I can relate to these things, I can relate to these actions and to these concepts. Then there are things that a person steps on them with his heel, meaning these are outside of my person. These are things that I cannot personally relate to. They seem to be insignificant. And the Torah says that it is important that we relate to those things because, as the Pasuk says, if you will be careful, even with those things that a person denotes as being outside, as being insignificant, that he is ready to step on with the end of his body, with his foot, with his heel, then Hashem will keep His promise to you. How do we relate these things? All the important things we do, all the important things which are significant, which I understand, I do. And yet the Torah says, Hashem's promise, that's what the Pasuk continues on to say. And Rashi, right on the spot, says that Yishmer L'cho Haftochosei, He will fulfill Haftochosei, His promise. Why is Hashem's promise dependent on these small things, insignificant things that a person deems outside of his personal relationship? And the explanation for this is that the principle of Torah and mitzvahs, the principle of Yiddishkeit is not just that a person act and do the right things. Our function as a Jewish nation, the principle of Yiddishkeit is that the general existence, our general orientation, where do we do everything? Where do we exist and where do we live? For a person to sense, to think that there is an end to him, meaning that there is the hill where he ends and then the rest of the world begins, it's nothing to do with him. If he ends, means that he lives, so to speak, in his own world. And there is the place where that world ends, and what happens after that is not of his concern. It doesn't exist. When the Torah says that where your heel ends, and even such things that you are stepping with your heel, you must recognize that these things are also really part of your world. Even things that you step on, which are completely outside of you. There's a saying from the Rabbi Rashab, I think, said that. And I think it's also quoted in the Hayom Yom, that there will come a time, in truth it is now also, but now we don't hear it, but there will come a time that we will hear it, where the earth beneath our feet, upon which we treat, by which we walk, the earth we take for granted. We say the earth is inanimate, the earth doesn't care what happens. And therefore we can walk on it with our heels, and it's totally insensitive. Makes no difference what we do as far as the earth is concerned. But in truth, the earth is God's creation. And the earth serves us and allows us to walk on it because we serve Hashem. And ultimately, when we walk on the earth, and as the expression is, a person walks and he does not think in Yonim of Kedusha, does not think Torah, does not think, do meaningful things while he's walking on the earth, then the earth itself turns to him and says, Bulach, that's expression, that's a Russian expression. What's mean Bulach? Bulach. Simcha. Idiot, right? Idiot. Yeah. Durak. All right. Durak. Yeah. So the earth says to him, that's the expression, it says, Bulach, you idiot, you durak. How do you take permission, how do you take right to walk on me? How are you better than I? The earth it bends down and allows a person to walk on it because a person is supposed to be above the earth. Supposed to be a servant of Hashem. Supposed to recognize Hashem's presence. But if he does not, then the earth itself protests and says, by what right are you walking on me? This is not just a nice saying. This is exactly what this pasuk is saying. We have to understand what the Torah is teaching us. The Torah is teaching us a complete reorientation. Everybody knows what that means? Reorientation. A change of attitude, a change of understanding of what is going on. Because naturally, from a worldly perspective, everyone orients towards himself. And he is concerned about what happens to me. And the Torah is teaching us that we should have a much broader and bigger orientation. We should understand that each one of us is representing the entire creation. And everything that happens in the creation is pertinent, is important to us. Even the mitzvah she'odam dosh ba'akovov, mitzvahs that a person treats upon with his heels, which means he says, oh, this is outside of the human level, of an intellectual level. It's insignificant. But we have to understand that it is still part of Hashem's creation. And the important thing for us is to declare and to show and to reveal that the entire creation is Hashem's creation, not only us, not only me, but the entire creation. There is a Gemara. The Gemara says, Chochma yesh bagoyim ta'amim. I'm quoting and then I'll translate. Chochma yesh bagoyim ta'amim, Torah yesh bagoyim al ta'amim. Which means, if you hear, that's the form of the presentation, that there is chochma, there is wisdom by goyim, by other nations, ta'amim, you can accept it. It is true. But Torah yesh bagoyim. But if someone presents that there is Torah bagoyim, al ta'amin, do not believe it. What's the significance of this teaching? What does it mean? What is Torah and what is Chochmah? Torah and Chochmah. Torah is Chochmah. Chochmah means wisdom. Torah is wisdom. Torah teaches a person how to live and how to behave. Teaches a person to understand the world. That's all wisdom. What is the difference? What is this very fine difference when it says Chochma yesh bagoyim ta'amim, Torah yesh bagoyim al ta'amim? And the concept behind it is precisely this teaching in our parsha. Chochma, this is a human quality. This is what we understand in here. We can comprehend and we can relate to in our mind. And the end, the Eikev means the end, the heel, the end of that is that which does not have significance in our wisdom. And therefore, Chochmah can lead a person, can give a person guidance in his life in terms of him personally, what is beneficial for me and what is good for me. But it does not teach him what it means that he is part of the big world. It teaches him what is good from his perspective. It does not give him a perspective of the entire creation. The Torah, the very beginning of the Torah, what is the starting point of the Torah? How does the Torah start? The Torah starts, we mentioned it many times, and Rashi right away asks this question. The Torah starts with Bereishis bara Elokim hashamayim v'ha'aretz. That in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. That's how the Torah starts. And Rashi, by the way, comments and he says, if the Torah came to tell us how we should live our lives, so then the Torah should have started from the mitzvahs, from the first mitzvah. Whatever it is, a mitzvah to tell us what to do. And here, in fact, the Torah begins from a totally different aspect, telling us, so to speak, a historical fact. God created the heavens and the earth. God created the heavens and the earth is a very interesting thing to know. But what does that have to do with the person's behavior? What does it have to do with the person's personal life? It's a good idea, it's a nice thing to know. And this is the difference between Torah and Chochmah. Torah begins from Bereishis bara Elokim hashamayim v'ha'aretz, which means that the Torah says, all the mitzvahs that I'm going to give you, later on, telling you how you should behave, how you should act, how you should build your home, how you should build your life, all of those things are not principally based on who you are, that you're a human being and you have wisdom. They are based on a totally different principle. They are based on the principle that the Shomayim and orders, that the heavens and the earth were created by God. And therefore you, when you begin to use your wisdom to understand how you should behave, you should have to take into account and understand where are you doing your actions. In what environment, in whose world, on whose earth are you walking, and what does the earth mean that you're walking on it? What does it mean that you're walking on the earth? Is that totally insignificant, or no? This is an earth that God created for you to walk on. We can readily understand, if one relates to this principle, we can readily understand and see how the value of things, the value of our deeds, what is important, what is not important, what I'm interested in, what I'm not interested in, completely changes. Where, as the Pasuk says, there isn't anything that is more important than something else. Because everything, wherever you turn, wherever you look, wherever you step, is all part of God's creation. This in turn gives us a different perspective also on ourselves. Whereas from a Chochmah perspective, like we discussed many times, there is that level of wisdom of Chochmah called Seichel Anushi, human Seichel. Seichel that demands of a human being to act in a certain way as a human being. But when we have Torah, and the Torah puts a different perspective on our lives, and says that our lives are built on the principle that even the earth and the heavens are godly. And therefore, when we build our home, for instance, we build it on the principles of God's presence in the home, not on the principles of the human being that's involved. Then the value of everything that we do becomes infinite, because it's not measured by human measurements. I once heard a story, I don't remember if I think I mentioned it here in some circumstance. There was this villager, I think I mentioned it here, and this villager in Russia went to Petersburg, and he came back and he says, you know, the Tsar spoke to me. The Tsar spoke to me. Not the Tsar, the king. He said, the Tsar spoke to me, so everybody, all the entire village got gathered together. He says, oh, what did the Tsar say to you? What did the Tsar say to you? So he says, the Tsar said to me, Pashol von. Go to hell. So, what?
He just wanted to know what it meant in English.
So, I told him. That's what it meant in English.
Okay, I was confused.
Oh.
So am I.
So this story has a significance. And the significance is that in fact the Tsar said to him, Pashol von, but the Tsar spoke to me. And if the Tsar spoke to me, then it makes no difference what he said. The point is that he spoke to me, which means that the Tsar recognized that I exist, recognized my presence, and he actually spoke to me. There's a pasuk that says, it actually is a pasuk in Tehillim, you may be familiar with it, where it says that Hashem promised David HaMelech that David HaMelech, he makes a covenant with David, a bris, that he inseparable, that he is never going to break this covenant. Then he says, if his children, if his offspring will break the covenant, if they will sin, then I will punish them. I will punish them, but I will never break the covenant. This is a very important concept. The Jewish people are in Golus, or 2,000-year bitter Golus. They couldn't find a place for themselves for 2,000 years, driven from land to land. So one may think, they are an unwanted entity in the world. They're constantly being thrown around. The truth of the matter is, however, is just the opposite. If the Jewish people were an unwanted entity in the world, then Hashem would have let them get mixed in with the other nations and assimilate to insignificance. in the history of the Jewish people, which is a long history, very involved history, not a passive, not a quiet history. In the history of the Jewish people, there were clear situations where there was a danger of assimilation, of the Jewish people getting lost among the Goyim, and then Hashem saw to it through all kinds of different means that they should wake up and recognize, know that they are different, and come back to themselves and come back to their own identity. And that is, in other words, saying that not only good things when good things happen, are an indication that Hashem relates to the Jewish people. But on the contrary, sometimes even negative things that happen, that is also an indication, and perhaps even a greater indication, that Hashem will not let the Jewish people get lost. We are now in the month of Menachem Av. Menachem Av. Av means father in Lashon Kodesh. In this month of Av, the most tragic things befell the Jewish people historically. Even in our own this moment. The most tragic things happened to Jewish people in Menachem Av. It's interesting that the name of the month is Av, his father. You know that in the Torah there are no monthly names of months. The Torah refers to the months by number. First, second, third, up to 12th, and we have a 13th month. But there is no names. The names of the months were actually assigned during the Babylonian exile. The Eden assigned monthly names because the Babylonians had names, so we also had names. Many of the names were actually taken from the Babylonian names. And the month of Av, where the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, that month they called Av. Doesn't make any sense. After having seen what happened in that month, they call it Av. What's the explanation? The explanation is that just like in normal human behavior, when you see somebody giving a child a candy, he could be the child's brother, could be the child's father, could be a friend of the family, could be a total stranger. But if you see somebody giving a child, punishing a child, then you know that this is the child's father. Because nobody else cares about the child to punish him for misbehavior. This is a principle. The mother calls the father. So clearly we're not talking chas v'sholom about punishment, it's all behind us. But the point which I want to bring out is that the Eikevim, the Eikev, that by us there is no end where I end and the rest of the world starts. Because even where I am, the place where I am myself, is the same as the rest of the world. Because who am I? I am part of this world which Hashem created. The reason that I behave the way I behave, the reason I understand the way I understand, is because I am Hashem's creation. This directly connects to another piece in today's Parsha. Just wanted to orient us to the Parsha, to this Parsha's Chumash Dvorim. Chumash Dvorim, which is now the 5th book of the Chamisha Chumash Torah, is different than the other 4 books. The Gemara says that the 5th book, Chumash Dvorim, is something that Moshe said on his own. Moshe mipi atzmo yomer. Moshe said it on his own. So this is a shocking thing to say, because the Rambam says that anyone who said that Moshe, anyone who believes that Moshe wrote anything in the Torah on his own without a direct command from the Medrash is not because. How can the Gemara say Moshe mipi atzmo yomer? So the explanation is that not Hashem that Moshe said it on his own. Hashem directed him to say it. The difference is that the other Chumoshim, Hashem dictated to him word for word exactly what he should say. And Moshe was just like a conduit. You know what a conduit is? Just a siphon through whom it went. The 5th Chumash, Chumash Dvorim, is something which Moshe actually digested, so to speak, absorbed in his mind, and then he produced it. It was the same thing that Hashem dictated it, but it's something that came through Moshe's mind. The Pashas Eikev, this 3rd Pasha, Pashas Eikev, is the most obvious in that aspect. The way, if you read the Pasha, it seems almost that Moshe is having a chsidische Verbringen with the Yidden in this Pashas Eikev. He's talking to Yidden on a personal level. You should remember this, and you should understand this, and don't you remember what we went through here? Don't you remember what we went through here? Always remember our experiences and so forth. In this Parsha, there is a Parsha called, that's usually called Pashas Hayira. Pashas Hayira. The Parsha of Yira Shomayim, of Yira, of fear of heaven. This Pashas Hayira is one of the Pashas that many people, many Nuschois say it every day, just like we say Shema, we say Vaydaber, they say also Pashas Hayira every day. The Pashas Hayira starts off, Ato Yisrael, now Yisrael, Mo Hashem Alekecha Shoyim Me'imach. What does Hashem ask of you? What does Hashem ask of you? Kim Le'yira, only to fear Hashem. So, it seems to be expressing that it says all that Hashem is asking you, Le'yirat Hashem, to fear Hashem, nothing of great significance, nothing of great difficulty, so to speak. Okim Le'yira. So the Gemara asks, Oto Yira Milsa Zutra Sehi, is Yiras Hashem and such an easy thing to come by? Is that an easy thing? So the Gemara answers, yes. Lagabe Moshe Milsa Zutras. That from the Moshe's perspective, now Compared to Moshe Rabbeinu, it's a small thing. It's an easy thing. So the Alter Rebbe in Tanya asks this question, the obvious question. What kind of answer is this? Moshe Rabbeinu says, Shoyim Meyimach, that Hashem is demanding of you, of the Jewish people, here. The Gemara says, oh, for Moshe it's an easy thing. For Moshe it's an easy thing, but how do you demand from everybody else? You're demanding of everybody else. How is it an answer? And this is the principle that the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. And he says that what this is telling us, that a Yid is not alone. It's not when his heel ends, that's the end of the person. Every Yid, just like every Yid, is a Ben Avrom, Yitzchak, V'Yankiv. He is an offspring of Avrom, Yitzchak, V'Yankiv. And he has the merits, and he has the koiches, the qualities that he inherits directly from Avrom, Yitzchak, V'Yankiv. And he has the qualities that he inherits from all his great ancestors throughout the ages till this day. The same thing, Moshe Rabbeinu and all the great Jewish leaders, and particularly Moshe, who was the shepherd of the entire Jewish people. Every Yid is connected to Moshe Rabbeinu all the time. He is not alone. Everyone, if we reflect on our own lives, I mean, we're not children over here, everybody has a little story behind them. If we reflect on our own lives, we would see how many times in our lives we were almost falling over the cliff, almost losing ourselves. And suddenly something happens and we didn't get lost. And something reminds us of who we are. Because the Eikev, the heel of the person's foot, is not the end of the person. There's something, the whole world is supporting us. And that's why the Gemara says, Legabe Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the shepherd of all the Yidden, and he makes sure, he sees to it that Yidden have the insights and the refinement and the perceptions that Yidden should have in order to have Yirah, and therefore it's an easy thing. It becomes very simple. And what this actually is telling us is that in fact, just as a Yid every Yid inherited his neshama from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yankiv, we are also inheriting, we're also granted all the qualities that Moshe Rabbeinu gave us, including Yiras Hashem, and Ahavas Hashem, and everything else, all the other qualities. What Hashem, it says, Mo Hashem Elokecha shoyel meyimoch. What Hashem is asking us is not that we should create this Yirah. That is a very difficult thing. But that we should recognize it. We should recognize it when we sense it, when we are faced with it. This is the meaning of Eikev. A person can see things and he recognizes significant things. He has an insight of the truth, of a pure truth. Then he says, this is too far from me. This is taking me away from myself. This is too much for me. He doesn't realize that this is not too much for him. This is exactly what Moshe Rabbeinu is giving him, what the Rebbe is giving him. So don't step on it with your heels. Don't push it away. Don't think that this is something bigger than you can relate to. Because the reason you have it is not because of your own seichel, but because you were given it by Moshe Rabbeinu. We have insights that we were given by Moshe Rabbeinu that we will never come to on our own. Moshe Rabbeinu is asking us is we should not treat on it with our heels. We should not kick it away. We should not push it away. Not say, oh, this is too much, I don't want to relate to it. And therefore, the Torah says, what is in fact the means by which we can imbue, what imbue means, by which we can actually build this attitude into our own person. That we can actually relate to all the good things that we were given, all the spiritual things that we were given. What are the means for that? And the means for that is that we pay attention to the smallest thing. We pay attention to things that we consider unimportant. Seems to be a simple statement. But this simple statement, the Torah says, Eikev tishmiyum, if you listen and you keep and you pay attention to Eikev, to those things that you are ready to step on with your heel, you don't understand, you don't realize how great and significant it is. This actually binds you with all the truth that is part of the reality of your life. This is where the difference between Chochmah and Torah comes in. Chochmah is you're living in your own mind, your own wisdom. Torah connects you to the truth, to Breishis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. Torah gives you an understanding that whatever you do is true not only because it makes sense to you, but because it is absolutely true, completely true, from the perspective of the whole creation. Breishis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz, the very creation of the world. And the one simple, most direct and easy way to build this into our character and to create this orientation in our lives is, in fact, by this simple approach of Eikev Tishmi. Pay attention to the minor things, to the simple things. Okay.
That means pay attention to the small things. That means look at the big picture or the detail.
The detail.
That means you have to be attentive to every little.
Well.
Which are maybe even insignificant.
Well, you have to attend to every little thing that comes your way, that you become aware of. That's what I'm saying. I don't mean that you should go and start looking for detail. But that which comes your way, don't push it away. Oh, it's insignificant. There's a story of a Yid, It was a very simple Yid. He was a shamash in the shul. You know what a shamash is? He took care of a shul. He took care. He would sweep the floor and put everything in order. A shamash in a shul, in a synagogue. Huh? The Shem Tov was also a second, right? A shamash. This Yid, this shamash, had one thing that he was extremely careful with. He would, when he saw what we call a shema, any torn piece of a sefer, of a chumash, of a gemara, of a siddur, he would make sure to collect every one of these little pieces, and he would collect them in a bag. He would never, shemus, we all pick up shemus when we see it, but he made this was his big personal mitzvah, so to speak. So the story is, this is about Shemske's story, that these packages of shemus is what brought him into Gan Eden. I don't want to know the long story. The point is, something that seems to be insignificant. In our lives, there's nothing insignificant. The other day we spoke about, COVID of Sforim and so forth. We have to understand everything that comes to our mind and we see that this is a question of Koved Hashem or Chas v'Sholom Chil Hashem is pertaining to us. It may be the most simple thing. When you put on tefillin, for instance, and the Ritzua falls on the ground, nothing happened. You don't have to fast for it. The Ritzua fell on the ground, it's not a Koved. If you understand the meaning from Koved Hashem, you would pick it up. You would not let it be on the ground. Huh?
The cover?
No, the Ritzua. The string. The strap. The strap many times falls on the ground. Just pointing out, some people are not careful with it. These are the small things that Odom goes ba'akovov, that one steps on and says, the important thing is I'm putting on tefillin. The Ritzua, this is not important. Not to say that if Ritzua is on the ground, your tefillin are insignificant, you put on tefillin, you did everything right. But this is where we become aware of Hashem's presence in our lives in every aspect, in everything.